आ रही है?
बिल्कुल क्लियर जी, बहुत बढ़िया आवाज आ रही है.
Okay, so I'm using this.
Sir, you are on. You are live. Please go on. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, welcome to the viewers of Dr. Ambedkar Caravan. We are here today evening to discuss about Saint Kabir, our own saint, and we'll be presenting the works of Saint Kabir in a new perspective, what we have been told and what we ought to know. We have with us our esteemed historian, Dr. Raj Kumar Hans, and he'll be talking in detail about the Kabir's ideology and Bhakti movement and the time his timing of the revolution and what that revolution holds in today's context. So first of all, I'll be presenting a short 5 to 10 minutes presentation, PPT presentation on Kabir, and thereafter I'll pass on the baton to Professor Raj Kumar for a detailed and in-depth explanation about Kabir's work and his ideology. So I'll start with my presentation. So myself, Dr. Jas Simran Kehal, I am an orthopedic surgeon by profession and practicing at Nangal, Punjab, and I also done a master's in journalism and mass communication. So I'll be talking about revolutionary Kabir, and I'll be talking about ideology of the Kabir. I'll not be talking about his miracles. Both his birth was miraculous, as well as his dead body was. It had a mysterious ending. And another miracle was that Sikandar Lodi cut off Ramanand's head and Kabir restored it back to life. So these are the miracles we have been taught, we have heard, and in my personal opinion, these are Brahminical propaganda to dilute his real theology. So I'll not be talking about his miracles, rather I'll be talking about his ideology through his shabds, through his hymns, through his dohas, as well as what is the relevance today. So there will be almost a dozen of slides and it will take around about 10 minutes. First of all, the short historical biography. He was born, his birth as well as death, the timing as well as the mode of his birth and death, both were not very clear. They are controversial. But by consensus, he was born around 1440 at Magar, Varanasi, UP. His father's name was Niru, mother's Nima, wife Kanya Loi, and kids were Kamal and Kamali. So he died away from Kashi in near Varanasi, India. So what we have been told during our school days, as well as by hearsay, that he was a poet, he was a mystic saint, he was a weaver by profession, as well as he was a proponent of the Bhakti movement. One of the few, the others being Tulsidas and Ravidas, Kabir, Birabai, these are all saints of Bhakti movement. So as my previous PPT presentation, I emphasize this point again, that until the lions have their own historians, the history of hunt will always glorify the hunter. So what we should know.
Yeah, sir, there is no PPT on the screen.
Oh, no PPT? Just a moment. Just a moment. I'll check it out. Yes. Is there any PPT now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Is it?
Is there? Please go on.
Yeah. So what we should know that just that he was a master of language. He was a fierce social critic. He was termed as an iconoclast by a number of researchers. I'll explain that this term iconoclast later on. He an iconoclast who probed and questioned, who challenged and exposed. He jolted his audience into facing truth. He was a symbol of caste. As such, caste means he belonged to a lower caste, although his caste as well as his religion is also controversial. He was vocal against Varna system and valued labor of all sorts. Throughout his life, he lived a life of simplicity and morality. And the last and the most important was he outrightly rejected celibacy, asceticism, penance, austerity, rituals, pilgrimage, idol worship, and he demolished the authorities of texts which were considered sacred before the Bhakti movement. So as far as Dalit identity and caste assertion is concerned, she says that, so I am born a weaver, so what? Just a moment. So what? I have got the Lord in my heart. He also said, tell me, O Pandit, what place is pure, where I can sit and eat my meal. So he makes a very bold statement about his profession as well as his jati or caste. And he emphasizes that bhakti should be accessible to all. Next, he demolished the myth that Brahman is superior by birth. He says that same as the semen, skin, urine, same is the blood and bone. From a single source we all are born. How one is Shudra, the other a Brahman. Another one is, the donkey is far better than Brahman. Dog is better than other castes. The cock is better than the mullah. They wake the people by their blasts. So he was very vociferous as far as Ravidas. In comparison with Ravidas, he had more extreme language, and he also says that Charo Yug Brahman Khote. So he proclaims that Brahmins are notorious. He didn't hesitate to call Brahmins as wretched criminals of all four yugs. So he also rejected Brahman worship, and he says, Jati na pucho sadhu ki, pooch lijiye gyan, mol karo talwar ka, pada rehen do myan. This is self-explanatory, that he emphasizes on the wisdom of a person rather than his caste, and that caste by birth. Another was is, ऊंचे कुल का क्या जन्मया, जे करनी ऊंच न होए, सोवने कलश सुर भया, साधु निंदा सोए. So he says, being born in upper caste does not make one better. Even if a golden pitcher is filled with intoxicant, a saint will speak ill of it. So saint will speak ill if it is even gold plated. And the most important is, chode an kare pakhand, nao suhagan, nao rand. This is prescribed in Guru Granth Sahib, in Kabir Bani in Guru Granth Sahib. I again reiterate, chode an kare pakhand, nao suhagan, nao rand. He says that one who discards the grain is practicing hypocrisy. She is neither a happy soul, but bride nor a widow. So he also demolishes the rituals of fasting and pilgrimage by his teachings and his dohas. He also denounced Brahminical scriptures, as I told in my previous lecture, that at those times the Sanskrit was used to be refined speech. So the Veds, the Puran, the Shastras, they were written in Sanskrit prior to the Bhakti movement. So the beauty of the Bhakti movement was that they introduced Prakrit, the ordinary natural speech, natural language. So the Bhakti movement has a distinct theology. It used people's language. He accepted lower caste, women, Muslims and untouchable. And the Bhakti movement attempted to make religion accessible to commoners. So he busted the myth of this Brahmins and Granthis, so that they can decode the Brahminical scriptures. And we can reconcile from our school times that the Kabir's dohas are so simple that they can be decodified and they can be learnt very easily even by school children. So Kabir says, Sanskrit hai krup jal, bhaka behta neer. So he says that Sanskrit is stagnant water of the Lord's private well, but vernacular language, that is local language, is the rippling water of the running stream. So he contrastingly portrays Sanskrit as a closed language and the local vernacular language as a commoner's language, and they emphasize Nirgun Bhakti. That is, Nirgun Bhakti is opposite to Sargun Bhakti. That Tulsidas, he was also a saint of Bhakti movement, but he focuses Bhakti on Ram. Meera focuses her Bhakti on Krishna. So these the Ravidas as well as Kabir, they were proponents of Nirgun Bhakti, that is personal devotion to the formless, impersonal divine. So that was the time of Hindu-Muslim warfare. So he tried to unite them. He was born as a Muslim probably, and after his death, both the Muslims as well as Hindus proclaimed him to be theirs, belonging to their religion. So he says that make your mind your Makkah, your body the Kaaba, yourself itself is the supreme master. So this new concept was copied by Sikhism and incorporated in Sikh religion, that yourself is the supreme master. He also says Hindu to Tirat chale, Makkah Musliman, das Kabir dwaye chori ke, Hakka kare reh jaan. He says that Hindu goes on pilgrimage, Muslim goes to Makkah. Kabir leaves both sides, resides in the soul, the abode of God. He also summarizes that the Lord of the Hindus and Turks is one and the same. Why become a mullah, the sheikh? He was a very profound anti-caste crusader. I'll quote only one of his shabad from Shri Guru Granth Sahib. The English translation of the shabd is that in the dwelling of the womb, there is no ancestry or social status. All have originated from the seed of God. Tell me, O Pandit, O religious scholar, since when have you been a Brahman? Don't waste your life by continually claiming to be a Brahman. If you are indeed a Brahman, born of a Brahman mother, then why didn't you come by some other way? I repeat, if you are indeed a Brahman, born of a Brahman mother, then why didn't you come by some other way? How is that you are a Brahman and I am of a low social status? How is it that I am formed from a blood and you are made of milk? So you can easily correlate these lines from the Bhakti movement to the Sikh Guru Granth Sahib, even to Baba Sahib's annihilation of caste. These are they seem to be in the same chronology. And the last slide is about his literary works. He composed. He couldn't write, so he composed his dohas as well as shabds and pads. The dohas were rhymed couplets of 4.5 lines, and the shabd and pads, they were lyrical poems. They are incorporated in Shri Guru Granth Sahib of 16 to 18 lines. He wrote in Ulat Vansi, that is upside down language. Although this upside down language was originally propagated by Buddhism, but in the Bhakti movement, especially of Kabir, we can see his literary works in upside down language. It carried very important message, that it was a rhetorical as well as teaching devices. As far as Sikhism is concerned, 541 poems are incorporated in Guru Granth Sahib, and the Kabir's was the largest contribution amongst the Bhakta Ki Bani and the Sufis. So Kabir's collection of words is famous as Bijak, and it has 3 parts: Ramani, Sabad and Sakhi. That is all from me about the Kabir. And the last thing is about, he was termed as iconoclast by historians and research workers. And if I explain iconoclast is a person who attacks or criticizes cherished beliefs or institutions, that is, set established beliefs and institutions. Iconoclast is a destroyer of images used in religion worships. So he was an iconoclast. As far as his dohas is concerned, he was a master in language in spite of being an illiterate. He was a more fierce social critic than all other Bhakti movement saints. And he probed and questioned everything, and he challenged and exposed the bad things in the previous regions. He jolted his audience into facing the truth, and he asserted his caste as well as his lower status. And again, I reiterate that he was very vocal against Varna system, and he valued labor of all sorts. He continued his weaver profession throughout his life and lived a life of very simple and morality. And last of all, he rejected celibacy, asceticism, penance, austerity, ritual, pilgrimage, idol worship, and the previous authorities of the text. So this is the basic format about Kabir. Now we pass on to Dr. Raj Kumar Hans. He'll be explaining in detail about the Kabir's ideology and in relevance to today's. As far as Dr. Rajkumar Hans is concerned, he is a retired professor of history from Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Gujarat. He has masters in history way back in 1977, probably the year I was born. He was already a master's in history, and he is a PhD in history also from Baroda University. He specializes in social and cultural history of modern media, and very important books he is contemplating that. One is history of Punjabi Dalit literature and history of Dalit in Sikh religion. And I want to tell the viewers of Dr. Ambedkar Caravan that next Wednesday we'll be holding a lecture on this topic, that is the history of Dalits. This is a very important topic of history of Dalit in Sikh religion, and this topic is being mastered by Dr. Raj Kumar Hans. He will be presenting a very panoramic picture about Dalits in Sikh religion. And another book is Intellectual History of 19th Century in Punjab. So he has many awards and publications to his credit, almost 24 publications and almost hundreds of awards to his credit. So I pass on the baton of taking Kabir to Dr. Rajkumar Hans. Welcome, Professor Rajkumar.
Thank you very much. Extremely thankful to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and especially to Mangesh ji, who has facilitated this. And I'm also thankful to Dr. Kehal, who has nicely introduced the theme. So I think the introductory remarks by, am I audible? Is it okay?
Carry on, sir. Carry on. You are audible.
Okay. Now we are looking at dealing with or learning from one of the most original thinkers that India produced in last 3,000 years. Kabir, having born in untouchable Dulaha community of UP, present Uttar Pradesh, and he lived in Kashi, which was considered as the most holy place for the Hindus. I'm sorry to say that I'm not really sorry, but I'm saying the word Hindu did not exist, and it is not available in all the old shastras. It was imported. It was used by the Arabs and Persians for the people who lived along or beyond the river Sindh, and they could not pronounce the word Sindh, so they used it Hind, and the people living there, they called it Hindu. So nonetheless, I'm saying it was a great gift to the Indian society, Indian civilization, that Kabir was born in a very low caste and untouchable family. But as I said earlier, we need to understand the contours of history or the entire Indian history in new perspective. What we know that it has been corrupted, what we have been given to understand through educational system, it is all has evolved in the last 150 years or so. So the British, who introduced the educational system for all people, though generally it was prohibited for the lower caste people in the for first 50 or 60 years, but slowly it got opened by everyone. So it is during these modern times, so modern times, we will also question it that it is not only in India that modernity begins with the Europeans or with the British rule, but it is in contrasting or it is in parallel with the European history. We will see how we understand this through our saints, our sons, and our bhagats, who were great thinkers. And saying Kabir had a wider reach. He was such, he did not know how to read and write. He was without letters, and he remained throughout his life. He did not learn, or he didn't bother to learning the how to read and write. And yet, what he composed was something revolutionary in character. So, what I'm saying, even when all these divisive divisions were very strong in the Indian society, and yet if someone who excelled in his thoughts or in his achievements, people would obviously follow. I'm saying because following Baba Sahib's model of how to understand Indian history, as I had talked at my last lecture, that it had been a kind of series of revolutions and counter-revolutions. And from Harappan civilization, it was one of the three world civilizations that India had produced, and it was around in the area of Punjab, and it had spread in far outreaching areas and so on. And yet, with the coming of the Aryans and with the Varna system, that was a counter-revolution. The first was a revolution. The second was the counter-revolution. And then to counter this counter-revolution, a new set of ideas were born, especially with Tathagat Buddhas who challenged Brahminical politics and social ordering. And hence, that was a period of revolutionary epoch in the Indian history. So thereafter, again, there was a resurgence of Brahminism after the decline of Buddhism, and that period is set, you see, between, say, 5th century to something around the 10th century or so. But with the arrival of the Muslims, there began a new chapter in Indian history, because that brought about major changes in the economy, in the social ordering, and so on. So again, with the arrival of with the coming of the Islam, so you have also the Bhakti movement started at the social and cultural level. So it was a most revolutionary kind of period. So from revolution to counter-revolution, counter-revolution to another revolution, and then that continued till you have the next counter-revolution with the rise of Peshwas, who had usurped the kind of, you see, a Shudra power established by Shivaji in Maharashtra, and it was spread throughout in most of the corners of India. And yet the Brahmins, Peshwas, usurped that power and reintroduced the older untouchable practices of untouchability and caste system in such a way that it came to be remembered, and it became the part of the curriculum and educational system. So we continue to treat it as something which the caste was fixed in time, and untouchability was all there for all the times, which was not the case. I think that's what, as a student of history, we need I'm more aware that we need to.
So we continue to treat it as something which is Western time, and unfortunately it was all there all the time. This was not the case. I think that's what
Is there any problem?
we need more weight that we need.
Hello, is there any problem?
Sir, the sound is not clear. Can you speak a little louder? Is there any other computer also running parallel?
No. There is no. But maybe I can remove this device and I will just see.
So let's try. If the problem persists, then I'll contact you. Otherwise, you continue. Just be a little bit louder and clear. Thank you so much. Continue, sir.
Am I clear? Am I audible now?
You need to be louder. I think so.
So I'm on my smartphone, so
Yeah.
that's why it could be a problem. Anyhow, I'll continue. That
Yeah.
these are some of, you see, the long waves of history through revolutions and counter-revolutions we need to understand. And Kabir emerges on the scene when there is a revolution had started in the ideas, in the political realm and the social realm and the economic realm and so on. So roughly from, say, 11th, 12th century down the line till 1700 or so on, that revolution continued, which was also a period of profound this bhakti movement, more so of the nirguna kind. Saguna was much closer to the Brahminical format, but still that also had contested the Brahminical divisive politics and so on. So I'm saying his reach, Kabir's reach, while being in Kashi, he was so confrontal to the Brahmins. I need not quote more than what already Dr. Kehal had talked about it, that he became acceptable even to all sections of the society. So much so that when they were, after his death, they were 5 or 6 Kabir Panths. So 3 of them, they were constituted of, or they were led by the Brahmins themselves, like Dharmadas, Shruti Gopal, and Tattva and Jiva of Gujarat. So his ideas were so profound and so revolutionary and so path-breaking that they had reached the every nook and corner of the subcontinent, but his ideas survived. They were collected by different set of sources, more so in Western India, both in Rajasthan as well as in Punjab. About Punjab, already Dr. Kehal has pointed out how he finds much larger portion in Guru Granth Sahib, which was composed in 1604. But prior to that, some of the Dadu Panthi collections had already taken, and they have collected and entered Kabir's poems and banis and songs. I would quickly speak about what were these Kabir, these collections. First was Bhakta Ratnavali by Ramanandi Anantdas, which was compiled in 1588. Next to it was obviously Guru Granth Sahib, which was compiled in 1604. And then you have another Ramanandi kind of compilation, but all these traditions were also attached to Dadu Panth, and it was Bhaktamal of 1624 by Nabadas. Interestingly, a commentary on Nabadas's Bhaktamal was also written by Priyadas in 1712. And then these were, I would say, where you have all the kind of these kind of using miraculous stories entering in, because they were not compiled truthfully. They were all kind of legends were constructed by the time it was already 150 years after his death when all these compilations were taking place, or so. But Kabir Panthis, who were also close to Dadu Panthi, they also had made their own compilations. One was Bhaktamal of Raghavdhal, which was compiled in 1720, and its commentary was done by Chaturdas in 1800. There was another Bhakt Vijaya by Mahipati of Varkari tradition in Marathi language in 1762. So I'm saying in the 16th and 17th century, most of the works of Kabir's had been compiled, they had been preserved, though there also had been interpolations of kinds, and we will come to it later. So much so, I would say that he had such a wider reach that in the 20th century, no less than Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore had translated his 100 poems of Kabir in 1915, and which became a kind of reach to the other parts of the world. So, but he also made it clear that there had been interpolations by successive generations into the Bani's original ideas of Kabir. So one needed to be very clear on these. Some of the contemporary Kabir Panthi collections were, one was Kabir Mansoor, which had appeared, it was compiled in 1887 by Parmanand. So that was, again, I'm keeping with that. So much so that even in the 20th century, another powerful philosophical thinkers, Osho, Acharya Rajneesh, who had collection of most of the spiritual knowledge of the world. So he had a book called Revolution, where he had given talks on Kabir's messages and so on, and he called it Revolution. So no wonder we are treating Kabir as a revolutionary in the history of India. There are so many publications, not only by Indian authors, belonging to all different castes and communities and so on. For instance, Hazari Prasad Dwivedi has written, Purushottam Agarwal had Akatha Kahani Prem Ki, and so on. And there are so many, numerous works that had come up, and there are large number of publications from the abroad, from other parts of the globe. So that is what I'm saying, the strength of such a revolutionary thinker. Obviously, he had been also held, as the iconoclastic kind of thinkers. And interestingly, what this bhakti movement in a way, much more vibrant in northern India, in Nirvani tradition, where there are no attributes to the God. That is what is called by, say, great Sanskrit scholar Sheldon Pollock. It is called vernacular millennium, that 1,000 years of the coming of the emergence of the local languages from the earlier kind of spoken languages. So they become the vehicles of enriching the local languages. So all the bhakts. So in that way, it is a very revolutionary period. And of all these bhagats, Kabir stands out as the most revolutionary. So these are some of the very basic ideas how we can understand, in a way, you see, decode our history, because it had been highly Brahmanized history. And our young historian Braj Ranjan Mani had a book, it was published in the early part of this century. It is called De-Brahmanizing Indian History. Not only de-Brahmanizing, but we have also been victims of what is called Europeanization of our histories. So it is a much difficult task for the historians, and the historians have been fighting this battle, which is a very heavy colonial legacy, and also the Brahminical legacy, in which we need to separate, not only to make more new researches into uncovering, unfolding of the hidden kind of and not known kind of histories when we are doing people's history. Interestingly, I did not talk about my own, not much has been talked about. I started my own career as an economic historian, researching into economic history of Gujarat in the first half of the 19th century. But then I moved successively from, you see, pure economic history to more social and cultural history in that way in the next few decades. So it was a long journey. I did work on the Gujarat history. I worked on diverse kind of histories there. I had worked on Ismailis, Aga Khanis, and so on. I had worked on the social communities there. But eventually, I also started focusing more attention to my histories on Punjabi literature, especially Dalit literature, and more so on Sikh history. And there also how Dalit's contribution had been neglected, and I will be speaking about it in my next lecture. Now, there are problems with the understanding. This is what I'm saying. These are the major challenges that the historians face, how to separate, you see, grain from the chaff. So that is a very difficult job. So if we are doing people's history, we have to move from the so-called archival history, and archives are always state-preserved archives, and most of our state systems, right from the ancient times to the modern times, they had been economic-centric or revenue-centric. So much of the details and ideas and data are compiled by or collected by the state around the economic issues, around the agricultural issues, and so on. So even the political history, we find a lot about it. But people's history, social history, how people lived, how they carried on their daily lives, and so on, so we know very little. So what are the ways in which people's history can be understood, it can be reconstructed? That is a big challenge. So we have to resort to or take help from the literary sources, literatures in different languages that got produced. Like we are now dealing with all the Bhakti saints, Bhakti revolutionary thinkers like Kabir we are dealing with, and how it comes through us in the present times from the past in oral traditions. So that is a very, very challenging job. There are all kind of mixing up and so on, additions and so on. So, but this is the only way we can have, you see, a different kind of history, different than what we have been oriented to, what we have been given to in the last 150 years or so. So it is a very challenging task. So you have methodologically also have to devise new kind of methods of doing it. There had been miracles around all these great thinkers, because if they were great, obviously people came to look at them with the great reverence and so on, and many myths could also be attached, and many miracles also, what are called, you see, hagiography about these people that was there. So we need to separate, you see, the myth reality from the myths. It is also said in the Brahminical kind of interpolations that Kabir's guru was Ramanand, who was a Brahmin from South India, but who had come to Kashi, and there are obvious problems of dating and so on, which do not match. And yet we have been told through all these kind of traditions that his guru was Ramanand. There are details which I don't want to go into, but I would also contrastingly say that if we look at Kabir's thoughts, they are so much opposed to what Ramanand held, that he was a dandadhari, he vested with things which vested with authority, while Kabir was not. He's a free thinker, he's a liberationist, rather than, you see, any kind of authority that could be wielded. While Ramanand believed in idol worship, Kabir was totally, he decried idol worship of all kinds. Ramanand had faith in Vedas and Vedic religion, whereas Kabir had faith neither in Vedas nor in Vedic religion and so on. He belonged to this kind of resistance tradition which had come from Buddha through, then survived in Siddhas and Yogis and Nathpanthis and different traditions. And this is how the ideas had come to Kabir's times. Ramanand's Ram was communal or incarnation of Vishnu, as he was Ayodhya's kind of ruler, and led a very conjugal life, while Kabir's Ram was universal. He was Nirguna, he was Nirankar, he was Niranjan, he was a pure, formless, without attributes and so on. So it cannot be accepted that he had Guru, you see, Ramanand as Guru. As such, I think what Guru he had was only Vivek, as he says, Kahu Kabir, main so gur paya, jaka nau bibeko. So it was that Guru I have found out, whose name is Bibek, is a kind of, you see, one who thinks rationally and is a radical thinker. Brahman Guru Jagat ka sadhu, Brahman Guru Jagat ka sadhu ka guru nahi. Pandit Vad Vadante Jhuta. Pande na karsi Vad Vivad. No, he is not, you see, in that way, he could not hold any Brahmin as his guru, because he was challenging the gurus in Kashi all the times. And we know that how he had challenged, confronted, you see, Brahmins outrightly, and they were enraged. Jo tu Brahman Brahmani jaya, to aan baat kahe nahi aaya? Tum kat Brahman, hum kat Sood, hum kat Lohu, tum kat Doodh. He says, why didn't you come, were born from, you see, another kind of doors? Why everyone was born from, you see, women's womb. And how can you claim that you were born, you see, from Brahma's mouth and so on, and that kind of thing? He challenges. So that's what I'm saying. It makes him unique in that sense, along with Ravidas, who both of them were almost contemporary, and they were living in Kashi, and they were challenging, and their acceptance of that challenge was very large. I had talked about it, how even the Rajput Ranis and so on, and Mirabai had considered Guru Ravidas as his her guru, and so was Kabir. They were confronting the Brahmins in the Kashi itself. So it is And then about him, he says he rejects all the traditions as Dr. Kehal had talked about it. Hindu kaho to main nahi, Musalman bhi nahi, पांच तत्व का पुतला गैबी खेले माही. Oh, how I don't belong to neither this section or that section, religious orders. I consider myself as natural being. I'm closer to nature, and that's what. And himself, the Brahmins had propagated that he was born to a Brahmin mother, but who had left him, you see, as a child, as an infant, which were picked up from the Ganges by these weaver husband and wife. But then he said, Jat Julaha, Naam Kabira, Ajhu Pati Jo Nahi, तहां जाऊं जहां पाट पटंबर अगर चंदन घिस लीना आए हमारे क्या करोगे हम तो जात कमीना, because he was considered as Julahas and other, you see, untouchable communities were considered as kamina, as the lowest of the low. He very, very strongly assert that he is a weaver, he is Julaha, and he is from the sections which are considered as niche, the lowest. And about his own thoughts in as a challenge to the two major religions of his days, he says, nahi dharmi, nahi adharmi, na main jati na kami ho, na main kehta, na main sunta, na main sevak swami ho. ना मैं बंदा ना मैं मुक्ता ना मैं बिरत नरंगी हो ना काहू से न्यारा हुआ ना काहू के संगी हो. This is a longish kind of composition, but I'm saying he's very clear what he is and what he is not. And in a way, you see, he would in his kind of high state of ecstasies, and he would say, हमन है इश्क मस्ताना हमन को होशियारी क्या, and रहे आजाद या जग में हमन दुनिया से यारी क्या. He has that kind of he is a liberated soul. He doesn't hold you see himself dear to any kind of these larger identities or religious orders and so on. And almost all the Bhagats, thinkers, they were householders, they were grastis, they were not the people who would meditate, you see, while in the caves of the mountains and so on. And he was, they married, they had their lives, and they worked as workers. And he was a weaver. He used to weave the clothes and so on. And what he said, Pani bich meen pyasi, muhe sun sun ave hansi, घर में वस्तु नजर नहीं आवत बन बन फिरे उदासी. Why people go to different places, pilgrimages, and in the mountains, in the forest, to find, you see, there's kind of spiritual masters and so on. And he, in the same, he continues, Atam Gyan bin jag jhuta, kya Mathura kya Kasi. If you do not realize this self, what is called Brahm Gyani, if you do not get Atam Gyan nahi hai, then the entire world is false. So that is what, whether you go to Mathura or Kashi, that is useless. And then he also continues, घर में जोग भोग घर ही में, घर में जोग भोग घर ही में, घर तज बन नहीं आवे जावे, घर में जुक्त मुक्त घर ही में, जो गुरु अलख लखावे. He says everything, the God is, if you subscribe to the idea of God, it is within you, it is within your family structure, it is in your home. You do not need to go to all these temples and masjids and so on. He had been very acerbic while condemning, attacking, you see, all the mullahs and kajis and pandits and so on. And so much so, he can, moko kahan dhoonde bande, main to tere paas mein. That if, why do you go in search of me in different kind of places, exotic places? I'm with you only. खोजी होए तो तुरते मिलहों पल भर की तलाश में. If you want to, if you are a seeker, if you want to search it, you will find it, you see, in पल भर की तलाश में. कहे कबीर सुनो भाई साधो सब श्वासों की श्वास में. Everyone's in every breath you have. कहो कबीर सुनो भाई साधो सब श्वासों की श्वास में. He is in every breath or everyone's breath. There are also other kind of, there are so many things. I'm only giving hints that how radical on all these facets of life he has been. And he talk of this life, he has no truck for the life after death or with other kind of lives and so on. Sadho bhai, jeevat hi karo asha. If you want something, if you want to improve your life, improve your condition, only in this life. Jeevat samjhe, jeevat buje, jeevat mukti nivasa, jeevat karam ki faans na kaati, मुए मुक्ति की आशा, मुए मुक्ति की आशा. तन छूटे जब मिलन कहत है, सो सब झूठी आशा. अब हूं मिला तो तब हूं मिलेगा, नहीं तो जमपुर बासा. He chides at all these kind of falsehood which had been spread by the all kinds of religious leaders and Brahmins and so on. ही कहे सत गहे सतगुरु को चिन्हे, सत नाम विश्वासा, कहे कबीर साधन हितकारी, हम साधन के दासा. That if you provide me that kind of devices and sources, I am your slave. Yeah, हम साधन के दासा. Give me that device which can get me that power. I think I will. He is the more prolific, I would say, and also found in all compilations of the early modern times. I would say, as a student of history, that our modern times do not begin as we have been injected by all these kind of devices by the Britishers, that modern Indian times or history only begins with the British. But I would say that this revolutionary period, with the coming of the Islam, with the opening up of the urbanization of the economy, with the large number of people getting employment through this increased demand for the supplies to the armies and so on. So all these things, whether this was cloth was the most important item required by everyone, especially with given the extreme kind of weather conditions. So it opened up and improved the lot many artisan communities with the all. But then what kind of society they had envisioned? As I said with the Guru Ravidas, that he had envisioned the Begumpura, the place, the society, an order where there was the life without sorrows, or city without sorrows, a society without sorrows. Kabir Sahib also has the similar kind of vision. He says, Avdu Begum Des Hamara. Okay, now, oh my friend, our Des, Begum, it is without sorrows. Avdu Begum Des Hamara. राजा रंक फकीर बादशाह सबसे कहो पुकारा, जो तुम चाहो परम पद को बसियो देश हमारा, जो तुम आए जीने झोंके तजो मन की भारा. Remove your all those miseries, all your burdens and so on. तजो मन की भारा, धरन आकाश गगन कुछ नाही, धरन आकाश गगन कुछ नाही, नहीं चंद्र नहीं तारा, सत्य धर्म की है महताबे साहेब के दरबारा. It is only this in this earth, not in Chandrama, not in stars and so on, neither in Akash and so on. But kahe Kabir suno re pyare, Sat Dharm hai sara. Sat Dharm is only truthful life. It is that sachara, that kind of life which is important. And this is, there are so many other things that he is so confrontal. He uses the language as an artisan, as a worker, as a in the what is called, you see, in the folk idiom, he describes everything with in a confrontal mode, that he doesn't leave any facet of life untouched in his vast kind of compositions. There are other things I will not, I think, go to. He talks of the transcending all these created limits, and he said, "Had behad dono se nyara aisa bhesh hamara," that we do not, we are not confined, we are not captive of all these limits that have been prescribed by all the religions, by all the orders. So we are liberated people, and we want a liberated society to be with. And I think what I will give something concluding remarks here, waiting for if there could be questions. Why he's a revolutionary? There is no doubt that I have given a trajectory of, you see, his works, the way they have been compiled right from the 15th, 16th century. And I said 15th, 16th century are the most vibrant intellectually. They were churning of minds and so on. So there are a large number of these thinkers conversing with each other. They are in dialogues with each other, and they are sharing their ideas. They are not competing with each other, but they live in conviviality. They move in, they were great travelers, and that made it so vibrant, so much that Akbar, as a ruler, started using his own kind of transcending these conventional religious boundaries. He had Sulekul and that kind of new format of religiosity he had. They had such an impact, and that's why they are revolutionary. They were relevant in their times. They were most challenging in their times, and they are most relevant even today, when you have in the kind of undeclared emergency on the sites of Buddha, you have a temple being inaugurated today. That is a kind of counter revolution that had begun with the what is called freedom, that independence that we assume. Baba Sahib had contributed hugely in this process of independence of minds. But though he wrote constitution, he was the architect of modern India in several senses. He had Kabir and Raidas, he held them, in great esteem and great reverence, and he, because his family was Kabir Panthi and so on. And not only that, he had contributed immensely through the framing of the constitution, but also being, modern architect of modern India, establishment of Reserve Bank of India, establishing the dams and so on and so much. But about the freedom, he also made it clear that it is freedom not for the people. They have to continuously fight for their freedom. And I think the way we got, in a way, the country got, it was handed over to the new rulers who were very, very, they wanted quick kind of transfer of power, and they didn't mind, you see, even the partition along the religious lines. And I think that's where all the great liberational ideas of liberation and independence and emancipation through by these revolutionary thinkers, they are very, very relevant and important and significant for us even today. Thank you very much. If there could be some questions, because in a given short time, you cannot touch everything that could be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rajkumar. Thank you very much for giving us a detailed view about the ideology of Ravidas and reminding us about his dohas and the concept of his teachings. And thank you again for reminding us about this temple day as well as this counter revolution, the counter revolution which is started by the extremists since last 20-30 years and culminating today or starting today or giving a new direction today on a temple day on August 5th. I have a couple of questions. There is a question from Smita Patel. She says that Bhakti tradition of Maharashtra is also having gender aspects in which plight of women on caste, gender and class was raised by Janabhai, Soyarabhai and so on. She asks, which are the women saints of Nirgun tradition of Kabir? She wants to know about the women of Nirgun tradition in Kabir.
You see, it's not many are known, Nirguni tradition, because if you have Mirabai, she is considered to be Saguni. But the problem, I think, with the geographical conditions or the political kind of conditions for the entire North India, that's why it is a very different kind of traditions in, say, South India in general, but also in Maharashtra. It's very wonderful that there were, you see, these women who also came out and they become part of the questioning thinkers. I'm aware of that tradition, but we don't have that kind of tradition in North India in general, I would say. Also because it was a very, very politically turmoil area, and Brahminism had become very strong, especially in the Gangetic plains and so on. Though in Punjab, there were attempts to you see, by gurus themselves, they opened up, they took up this question of gender equality and so on. But again, you see, as all of us are aware, that there were so many invasions of Abdali and Nader Shah and so on. 18th century had a very different contours, but that was not the same state of affairs in the rest of the country. But in generally the North India, starting from, say, Peshawar, going to Calcutta and so on, that was the different conditions were there. But I would say it was under such conditions that I'm more aware of the Punjab situation, that how in the 19th century, the two major, I would say the first two major women poets, they emerged from such tradition. One was the Norang Devi, and another was the Piro Preman, who was very, very aggressively confrontationist, and she was, that is a wonderful thing. But I don't think there were many of the women, you see, who came up in that direction. Though it is said that, you see, his own son, along with his son Kamal, there was Kamali, his daughter also had something to do, but not much is available in that.
Another question is a couple of Facebook users, they want to know that is there any evidence of interaction between Kabir and Ravidas, and whether there was any follow-up of Buddhism in Kabir's these writings and dohas, anything, any interrelation between all these things, because ideology seems to be the same.
You see, even in some of these, I have tried to see what they were both saying, and they were in their own sayings. There are you see, Guru Ravidas also had great reverence for Kabir, and he acknowledged that this is his ideas, and he one of his compositions he says so, and so does Kabir also mentioned somewhere, but I don't have the right with me, and I think it's available. I can put it on the internet itself. Those things I had taken note of, but I've kept somewhere. So they were they were contemporaries, and they were both of them were living in the same place, Kashi, and they had interaction. That is for sure. And they not only that, their ideas were quite similar. They learned from each other, and they discussed that there was a great samvad between them. So that is there. As we are more aware that how there is a legend that how Guru Nanak as a young boy, you see, he was sent by his father to do sauda for doing business, but whatever he had fed, you see, all the sadhus who had assembled there. So all these people, I would say, they tried to, they had great conversations between them. Not only that, Sufis and all these bhagats and yogis, they were in great dialogues with each other. So that's why wonderful ideas could emerge in that process of learning from each other, and not in competing with each other, but in say friendship with each other. Their basic, I think, ethical values were based on the love and compassion. They were not people who were governed or driven by hatred, contempt, which was the order of the Brahminical upper caste, Dvijas and so on. They used to hate Shudras and so on, but that was not the case. It was based on love, compassion, kindness, and so on. And that is.
There is another question, Professor Rajkumar. This question is from Ms. Meena Dhanda. She is a professor of philosophy and cultural politics at University of Wolverhampton. She asked, do you know of any attempt on the part of ruling dispensation to defang Kabir? For example, by removing his anti-Brahmin dohas or like something. She wants
Sorry, can you repeat it? Meena Dhanda is a very profound thinker, a scholar. Huh? What was the ruling?
It's a very intricate question. She asked, do you know of any attempts on the part of the ruling dispensation to defang Kabir? For example, by removing anti-Brahmin dohas or something like that.
I think there's a controversial is there. Sikandar Lodi, who is said to be the ruler at that point of time, and both, you see, Kajis and the Brahmins had made representations against Kabir that he has been very, very confrontationist, and he should be taught a lesson. So the legend goes that he was tried to punish by under the feet of, you see, the elephants. So all the 2 or 3 attempts, they failed. And obviously, I think as we are more aware, any kind of such revolutionary thinkers, they could not escape the attacks by the orthodox kind of people. We are more aware how they had attacked, you see, gurus like Guru Arjun, the 5th guru, was anyway, you see, was martyred, and so was the 6th guru had to take up the weapons and so on. The 9th guru was also, his head was seared in Chandni Chowk, and Guru Gobind Singh had also to confront, you see, the Pahadi Rajas and even the Mughals. Only I will talk about it. I think Kabir was also attacked, and so was, it is also thought that why he had to leave Kashi and die in Magar. Also because these attacks were there, and he was forced, in a way, exiled, you see, from Kashi. There is a Kamal Bharti, who was a great writer in Hindi literature and a great thinker also. He has confronted this question that it was not on his own will that he had to leave Kashi. Otherwise, Magar was known as, you see, something bad place for, but keeping Kabir's ideas, he did not bother about which place was sacred and which was not. So he voluntarily, I think, happily had ended up there. And so was Ravidas was also attacked. He was poisoned by the conspirators of all these, you see, the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas of Chittorgarh. And it is said that he was poisoned. So no one could escape. But it is great that these people had boldness, they had courage to defy, to say openly in the public spaces. They were performers. They were not confined in any temple or in any kind of mutt. They were saying it in the open spaces. That is something remarkable. And obviously, for saying it so loudly in the open spaces, they could not have escaped all these attacks, and that's what it is.
She also wants to ask about the current situation. That is there any current happening that Kabir's anti-Brahmin doas, they are being changed from the school curriculum or something like that?
You see, this has been going on. Like you see, they had been hot cakes. They were not. जैसे सांप के मुंह में क्या कहते हैं, छिपकली होती है, that kind of thing, कि उनको ये कोई भी revolutionary was not acceptable, so much so that even Ambedkar had been very, very kind of unacceptable, only because their strength is so much. They are so powerful thinkers that they could not do. Incidentally, in the modern times, and I think 4 or 5 years back, Gujarat government had introduced chapters on Baba Saheb Ambedkar, but then they were so confrontationist that they thought they will create, you see, a new kind of public. So they removed it, you see, 2 years back. So that kind of interpolations, first of all, I had talked about it through a long period of time. Many of their sayings or they had been also added to, many people had added to by trying to prove them, oh, they were Saguni, or they said so and so, they were more reverential to Brahmins and so, which they were not. So all interpolations had been there. But what I think her question is, if the say Kabir Panthis themselves, who were great followers, if they also interpolated, they created new kind of things for them. I think that has not come to the light so far. But these interpolations by the upper castes and Brahmins, that had been in the kind of, you see, under scrutiny for 150 years or so.
And I take last question. This is a very rationalist question from Delhi, Mr. Pratik Jha. He wants to ask about the relation between Ravidas and Mirabai. Although Ravidas, he belonged to this Nirgun type of this devotion, and how could he not force or coerce Mirabai to Nirgun tradition, because she was devoted to Krishna?
Okay, you see, the one thing that most of these thinkers, they also evolved through their kind of stages. So even if say Ravidas would have held, you see, Saguni, some kind of notions in the beginning, but he evolved, you see, from there. But I would say that even if Mihra was Saguni, because she was a Krishna Bhagat and so on, but it was only because of other queens of Udaipur, Chittorgarh, she was a great follower of Guru Ravidas. And I think along with her, she probably had visited Kashi and thought, oh, that he was a great kind of teacher. And this is how she came to recognize, acknowledge him as her Guru. That is there. It is there in the traditions. And there is no, I think sometimes it is also not a kind of hard divisions what we sometimes we think that there were, you see, Saguni and Nirguni. Most of these people were interacting with each other, though not accepting. Like if gurus were Sikh gurus were Nirguni, so they also had some of the Saguna elements in Guru Granth Sahib, if not the entire.
So that's all for today. Thank you, Dr. Raj Kumar Hans. We have had a long talk and a very good interactive section. I invite all the viewers of Facebook Caravan to do join us next week for this for another interactive session. And the topic is very new, the concept, and it is about Dr. Raj Kumar's research on Dalit Sikh Dalit tradition, and I reiterated to all the viewers that that we need to reread Kabir, unlike our school times, and read it as with the new perspective, and we need to explore him. We need to in fact follow him, and we can even quote him in these days when the focus is on temple, building temples and bringing our people to temples, and pilgrimages and free rides to all these places. We can profess his ideology so that people are more our people get more enlightened. And I close this session with a very beautiful quote, that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but the illiterate will be those who cannot learn and unlearn and then relearn. So we have learned the concept of Kabir during our school days. We need to unlearn those things, and we need to relearn those things according to our lines like Dr. Raj Kumar Hans. And everything is available in these social media days. We can relearn those things. We can relearn the anti-Brahminical, anti-caste things, as well as we can really stop this counter revolution, which is probably going to hurt us. So I request everybody to re-explore Kabir other than what we have learned during our school days. Thank you so much for joining, and we wish everybody joins us next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Thank you so much.